Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, Attention and ADHD coach Jeff Copper, and we're here with Alan Brown, the ADD Crusher. Alan, welcome to the show.
It is so good to be here.
You know, I've known you for way too long now, and it goes way back a long time, and I have to give him a lot of credit because I was trying to find my voice a couple years ago to really understand what I was all about, and I was calling myself an attention coach, but it really has kind of come around, and he was kind of going a different path, and it really kind of came together with your brain hacks. And for me, you've heard me say before, what's obvious is a function of what you pay attention to, and I've actually interviewed you on some other shows, and you've come on, don't focus on finishing, focus on starting. That's a shift in attention, and it sounds small, but just that little shift can actually be really powerful and make it happen. And so I'm kind of curious. Tell me about, how did you get the idea of just brain hacks? It's a great marketing term, and it's so much about attention. So tell us how that came to you.
Well, I tell you, the shorter, longer version of the story is that, you know, what I do is I teach people how to get more performance out of the brain. And yet, for many, many years, my brain was completely out of control. I was a drug addict. And I was just feeding my brain whatever it was that would fire it up. And I came to a realization when I kind of hit rock bottom, really, really rock bottom, that I could have control of this thing without the aid of external substances. And the way to do that is to simply change your thoughts, obviously. And what occurred to me is that when you just change the way you view something, you actually open the door to action or to relieving stress or to getting out of rumination just by flipping one little switch. And that really, to me, is the essence of what a brain hack is. It's
really funny, Alan. Most of the people that I interview on Attention Talk Radio or Attention Talk Video either naturally are very insightful and they see some stuff, or there's a trick that I'm trying to pull out of it. But the ones that I find the most fascinating are the ones that have been able to kind of witness their own brain and its natural habitat, if you will, and then kind of beat your brain at its own game. And I really think that these hacks and what you've described is kind of it, because back when you were, we've done this story before where you were rushing past your grandmother in the hospital, and I think she had cancer to go do a drug deal or something like that, and you stopped and you paused and you witnessed yourself for a moment and you said, wait a second, there's got to be a way to do this. And by witnessing your brain, these hacks really are ways of beating your brain in its own game, and they're really focused on the how and the execution of it. And I think it's kind of, you're very insightful and very powerful, because that's really what it kind of comes down to, is stopping and pausing and kind of getting out of your head and say, almost looking at yourself from afar and say, what's kind of going on here, and saying, hey, I'm going to make this thing happen. And I really think a lot of your hacks do that. Only you're kind of pioneering the field or forging that stuff and breaking it down into bite-sized chunks to help those people that are not quite as self-aware. What are your thoughts on that? You look like, I got you thinking, I think.
No, you know, and what you're kind of bringing me to is some language that you've taught me, which is, it's really about where you put your flashlight.
Yes.
You taught me that phrase, and I never thought of attention as being that. And it occurs to me, as you're just kind of going back over sort of my history, is that you know, you can keep your flashlight over here on the pint of ice cream or the pack of cigarettes or the bag of drugs or whatever, but there are other places you can put that flashlight. And then just setting aside all the addiction stuff, when you are ruminating on things and getting yourself down and being down on yourself, you can keep your flashlight on that, but you can also take your flashlight and move it to a different area, and it not only changes what's happening here, but it can change what's happening in your whole body. So that's the power of attention.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and one of the things that's really important is, I talk so much about ADD. It's not a deficit of attention. It's really a self-regulation issue, and the ability to pause and back up and put one of these things in effect as a tool to help, or an exercise in some cases, to help you shift what you're paying attention really is there. Even the show that resonates with me is don't focus on finishing, focusing on starting. If you sit down every time and do that, think of it, that's really an attention exercise. And if you do it over and over and over for a period of time, it will actually shift. And just not to get too deep, but we are 100% clear from research that if you change what you pay attention to over a period of time, it physically changes the brain. And these exercises, if you do it over a period of time, actually physically rewires your brain, if you will, which is what I think is so great about what you do, is you break these things down into bite-sized chunks for those maybe that are not self-aware to implement on a regular basis, for them to help implement this
and
stuff.
Just to elaborate on the one that you kind of mentioned, which is, you know, don't worry about finishing, just worry about starting, which really is a powerful hack for stopping procrastination. procrastination, which is key for us ADDers. You know, we ADDers often sit down and look at one of these big to-dos that's been sitting on our to-do list for a long time, and it makes us depressed, and we'll ruminate about it and sit there. And it's because we go, I have to finish that damn thing. I have to finish it. And what you're doing is you're shining your flashlight on the long journey of the finishing and the impossibility of you ever finishing it. But if you just shine your light, again, to borrow Jeff's terminology, if you just take your flashlight and just focus on, what if I just started it? What if I just spent 5 or 10 or 15 minutes on it? Boom, that's the classic brain hack. It just opens up the door to action and to freedom and to reducing stress because you've lifted all the expectation of all this finishing stuff. Great example.
So Alan's been a long-term friend and stuff like that. He does share a lot of these brain hacks on Crusher TV. So can you just tell our listeners our viewers, how they can look that up?
Yeah. Come to crushertv.com, watch a couple of previews of the show, learn a little bit more about becoming a member of Crusher TV, and go from there. I hope to see you there.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Attention Talk Video. Please subscribe to our channel. Every week we release another tip or another trick or another insight on ADHD or brain hack sometimes. So we hope you've enjoyed it. Take care.